Well, you've asked for it, and you've got it. This is Breach Report number 1 from Sean Hunt's Monsters. I'm your host, Sean Kennedy, with your weekly update about unseen forces and outworld enemies that both influence and invade our world, and those dark cults that support them and suppress the truth. It's been really quite humbling to see how many people have really wanted to see a weekly update from me in a news format so that I can get this sort of information to you. And despite previous projects, this one is going to be completely paranormally based. That way, I have less of a chance of being kicked off of YouTube, and it gives me a chance to talk about those things that I'm truly passionate about. And if you're like me, I mean, it all started back in the day with Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster books, and you just never really stopped doing it, did you? But now, here we are, still like with that splinter in our brain, trying to figure out just what's going on in the world around us. So, let's get into it. It seems that we've been watched for a while. Now, there's this doctor. She's an astronomer, and she's great. I think she looked just she's perfect. She'd be in a James Bond movie as one of the Bond girls. She's a doctor. She's discovering aliens, and she's gorgeous. Her name is Dr. Beatriz, I'm going to screw this up, Villarroel. Sorry, ma'am. Didn't mean to screw that up. But she's been involved with this story here. A new study from the 1950s photographic plates of California's Palomar University reports thousands of brief star-like flashes that show up more often on days when nuclear weapons were tested. Dr. Beatriz and her team, working with the digitized plates of the Palomar Observatory, taken before satellites even existed. Beatriz and her colleagues have identified over 100,000 transient light flashes, brief mirror-like reflections that appear and vanish within moments. Their findings suggest that a significant percentage of these may be real, physical objects orbiting Earth long before the space age began. Even more provocative, these transients show a statistically significant correlation with nuclear detonations and UAP sightings from the 1950s, forming a triangulated pattern between nuclear activity, unidentified aerial phenomena, and reflective orbiting bodies. Now, I love how these get all sort of like arranged in the media. I'm like, well, we don't think it's aliens, but, there's probably some sort of metallic craft up there that was watching the nuke thing, so, isn't that odd? Yeah, Beatriz speaks candidly about her academic resistance, pressures from peers, and her choice to publish this research, and openly, despite the risks, all while challenging the scientific establishment to confront what may be the most ontologically shocking discoveries of our time. And she was on, linked down below, with, I believe, Danny Jones. That's Jesse Michaels, the great Jesse Michaels, where he had an interview with her where she goes into this in detail. And there's a lot of things you're going to be finding in these reports where I link out to other, because there's so much media out there, especially on YouTube, that, I mean, we're thick with ideas and research that we can go after. There's almost too much to keep track of on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I'm here to help. As we slowly get further and further into this, you'll find that it's never been easier for us to get the answers that we would spend weeks and even months in the libraries trying to acquire. Now, one of the other stories that has been showing up is this thing with 3-Eye Atlas, and let me tell you, that is some wild stuff, right? A mystery, as NASA probe goes dark after close encounter with 3-Eye Atlas. What? On December 4th, this came out. NASA has revealed shocking new details after losing contact with the Mars space probe nearly 2 weeks after its close encounter with interstellar object 3-Eye Atlas. On Monday, the space agency said that the MAVEN spacecraft went dark on December 4th while it was observing the mysterious visitor NASA has declared a comet. Yes, it's a comet. Nothing to see here. Clearly just a comet. Never mind all the anomalies that have been going on. Yeah, just a comet. MAVEN has been orbiting Mars since about 2014 and has served as a communications relay for man-made rovers exploring the Martian surface. So I guess that means we're cut off from all the rovers as well. According to the American Space Agency, the probe moved behind Mars while tracking the interstellar object, then suddenly stopped transmitting and started rotating in an unusual manner as it re-emerged within view of Earth. NASA said it appears whatever happened to MAVEN on the far side of the planet has also caused the probe's orbit around Mars to change as well. However, without direct data from the spacecraft, NASA has been forced to analyze fragments of tracking information to figure out what's gone wrong. They won't know for sure how MAVEN's orbit has changed until it starts transmitting again. MAVEN was only 18 million miles away from 3I Atlas in October when it reportedly took a collection of photographs. It was supposed to, that as the supposed comet passed the red planet. Images which draw widespread criticism for their poor quality. Yeah, does anybody even believe NASA anymore? I'm not really sure. It's pretty sketchy, all the things they've gone. And you don't have to be Richard C. Hoagland to be like, hey man, seriously, NASA, seriously? While the NASA spacecraft has dealt with minor technical issues from the past, this is the first time in a decade that something may have actually knocked the probe offline and disrupted its orbit. Of course, we're not going to talk about the Russian probe that got smoked by something that was running at it from Phobos. Anyway, that's something else. On December 19th, 3I Atlas will pass within 170 million miles of Earth, its closest path by our planets on its journey through the solar system. Even without MAVEN online to track the object, Avi Loeb noted that the suspected comet will be close enough for amateurs to see it and photograph it with common telescopes, adding that any alleged cover-up won't be possible in just days, which is, yeah, I mean, the hobbyist telescope crowd, those guys are switched on. Avi Loeb did a really good long-form interview with Danny Jones, which is linked down below, along with all the stories that we're going to be talking about today, where he goes over all the NASA shenanigans. And let me tell you, there's no shortage of NASA shenanigans, to be sure. Now, me personally, I'm not too sure about the whole physical space aliens thing. I kind of have this model which I call the consciousness coral reef. Physical matter is really rare in the galaxy. Most of the galaxy, like the extended universe, is all like plasma. And even rarer than that is, well, conscious life. So I can't help but wonder if maybe it's consciousness itself and all the living things on the planet through some form of quantum entanglement that enable things from, well, not just far away, but even in other dimensions to be able to access this realm by virtue of consciousness. It's a wild concept, but I'll talk more about that later. Now, going along with the idea of a reef project, there's an engineering marvel that got discovered from the Stone Age underwater. The discovery began with geologist Yves Fouquet, who studied undersea depth charts created using advanced radar technology. Between 2022 and 2024, a team from the Society of Archaeology and Maritime Memory, SAM, conducted 59 dives, totaling over 35 hours underwater to document the structures. Like, how much would you love to get on that? What they found exceeded all expectations. The wall averages 20 meters wide and 2 meters high, with a total mass of approximately 3,300 tons, and carefully stacked granite blocks. At regular intervals, divers discovered large standing stones or monoliths protruding above the wall, in two parallel lines, remarkably similar to Brittany's famous menhirs, which I guess is a wall there, but significantly older. The monoliths, some reaching 1.7 meters in height, were originally placed on the bedrock before the wall was constructed around them using slabs and smaller stones, and using the slabs and smaller stones explains the report, according to Interesting Engineering. Now, that's cool and all, Sam. I got to admit that, finding that kind of stuff is kind of neat. But it's really interesting to me how, all these archaeology and underwater archaeology guys, they seem to sort of glass over anything that's even remotely controversial. It's like people are yelling about the shrimp they found under a rock when there's a sea monster, like, right there. I don't really understand it. And it's interesting the lies that keep getting spread about ancient technology. In fact, the good people at All That Is Interesting, bless their hearts, ran a thinly veiled propaganda piece called The Fascinating Stories Behind 20 Out-of-Place Artifacts, from the Antikythera mechanism to futuristic hieroglyphs. Now, this is typical of the kind of stuff that you find in mainstream archaeology. I'll try to get through this. These bewildering out-of-place artifacts, or OOP-arts, often seem too advanced for their time and place, leading to wild theories about advanced ancient civilizations and even aliens. Now, we're not even a paragraph into this, and you can see how this is already, not really unbiased. Anyway, out-of-place artifacts, or OOP-arts, are objects that appear to contradict our understanding and technological development in the ancient civilizations. Yeah, you don't need to go far. Okay, I'll get through this. These historical oddities have captivated public imagination for decades, spawning countless theories about advanced prehistoric technology, ancient aliens, lost civilizations with sophisticated engineering capabilities. From the so-called Baghdad battery to ancient figurines that supposedly resemble modern aircraft. These artifacts often serve as focal points for alternative history narratives. Yeah, those aren't actually the focal points. They're usually like massive stone blocks that no one can move even to this very day, and like stone vases that are made to like a millimeter thinness, and objects cut so flat that we can't do it today. So if we don't have the technology today, that would mean it's advanced technology at any time. They go on to stay here. The truth, however, is usually more banal than the headlines suggest. Many OOPArts turn out to be misidentified natural formations, swamp gas, modern objects that have become mineralized and more quickly than expected, or legitimate ancient items whose purpose has been misunderstood or it's been sensationalized. Yeah, they often use the tried and true technique of mixing obvious frauds with obvious fraud artifacts, which anyone could see is a fraud, with actual out-of-place artifacts in an attempt to paint everything with the same brush. Cool story, bro. You can read the rest of it there. And they have some a handy-dandy little slideshow where they list a couple of things where they conveniently state, like, yeah, we have no idea how they made this. We can't make this today, but it's clearly got to be, some sort of rational explanation for all this, because God knows we're not repressing anything, that's for sure. Except the good AJ over at Y-Files and Hecklefish, don't forget him, just dropped an episode this week called The Lost Labyrinth of Hawara, Evidence of Atlantis in Egypt. Now, Atlantis is something that they usually say, I'm surprised in that wall they didn't say Atlantis, because anytime they find anything underwater, it's always Atlantis. We discovered Atlantis. No, I don't think that's the case. Personally, I got a feeling Atlantis might be in Antarctica, but let's get into that a little bit later. In 450 BC, Herodotus described an Egyptian labyrinth so massive it made the pyramids look small, then it vanished under the desert for 2,000 years. In 2008, scientists used ground-penetrating radar and found it. A massive structure, 40 feet underground, covering 10 football fields. Now, this is totally separate from that structure they found on the pyramids that goes down like a kilometer and they think is a power source. This is a completely separate animal. The Egyptian government immediately shut down all research, as they're apt to do. Satellite imaging later revealed that 4 underground levels and a 130-foot metallic object at the center. Probably misunderstood. The researcher who published his findings was permanently blacklisted from Egypt. That seems fair. Ancient priests told Herodotus that the deepest chambers held the burial vaults of the kings who first built the labyrinth. Not the pharaohs, but whoever came before them. If they're right, Egyptian civilization did not develop over the centuries, but it was inherited from something far older. Now, you want to check out not just this episode of the Y-Files, because the Y-Files is one of those kind of things that you can go to normies and be like, hey, have you seen this? It's funny. There's a guy. He's got a talking fish. It's hilarious. And it sort of like spoon feeds them very gently into, a world where they're like, holy crap, why are all the craters on the moon the same depth? There's things like that eventually the evidence just becomes so overwhelming. There's not much you can really do about it. And as well, on the 9th, related to this, Unexplained Mysteries reported that further evidence points to giant columns beneath the pyramids of Giza. New satellite data reportedly backs up the claim of huge structures situated deep beneath Egyptian's Giza Plateau. Back in March, an international team of scientists claimed that discovered evidence, you heard about this, of structures descending 6,000 feet below Egyptian's pyramids of Giza. The discovery, which is made by researchers from Scotland University of Strathclyde and Italy's University of Pisa, involved using radar pulses to create high-resolution images of the subsurface. Describing their finds as groundbreaking, the team reportedly discovered 8 vertical cylindrical structures extending 2,100 feet below the ground, and even more unidentified structures descending a further 4,000 feet below that. Oh. Probably misunderstood or perhaps wonky. Okay. The alleged discovery was made with an understandable amount of skepticism. Well, yeah, let's dig, right? Let's show me the money. Let's get in there and dig that because, we got something on the radar. Let's dig it up. But no. with various researchers, archaeologists, and Egyptian Antiquities Ministry officials playing down the claim. Why would you play down the claims? We have the science, it's here. Let's go dig it up. Now, though, Filippo Biondi, the radar engineer who developed this specific imaging method known as synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, has maintained in an interview that 4 independent satellite operators have provided identical tomography data, leaving, according to him, little room for doubt with regard of the discovery. Well, it's not just according to him. It's actually according to 4-5 people now, and let's not forget there's been other people that have found stuff. There, Zahi Hawass, who was the head of Antiquities, kind of went, stamp, no good, you're out. But anyway, the pyramids are the tip of the iceberg, he said. It's just a hat to complete something that is located underneath. The substance is below. As before, however, it's going to take some seriously compelling proof to convince the archaeological community that this alleged hidden city is really beneath the Giza pyramids. What could we do? What could we do that would prove that? We have a location. There's a bunch of sand there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of lost in how what we should do about them. We could, dig it up. I don't know. It could be a plan. But if true, it would be the biggest discovery in centuries. Now, somewhat related to this, also this week, Dr. Jason Jorjani appeared on Danny Jones. Now, I love Jason Reza Jorjani. I love this guy. He's great. Why? Because, he thinks there's time-traveling Nazis on the moon. And who doesn't want to deal with time-traveling Nazis on the moon? Really? I mean, what do? I hunt time-traveling Nazis on the moon. That's what we're here to do. Like, that's our huckleberry, man. We're into that. But he did a fantastic podcast. I mean, there's a bunch of Jason Reza Jorjani podcasts, and they're all really, really great. He also did one with Jesse Michaels just recently. That's fantastic. And he says some great stuff. His book, Closer Encounters, it's third-year reading. You want to get through all of the Y files and a bunch of the coast-to-coast back files before you try to read that bad boy. And even when you do, that's going to be an audio book, because let me tell you, that reads like a third-year text. It is pretty advanced stuff. But on Danny Jones, he appeared with Danny Jones this week, podcasting, talking about the Epstein-Atlantis connection. Now, the one thing I love Jorjani, but the one thing he doesn't believe good and evil as such. So as we know from the last videos, which you haven't watched them, you should go back and watch, my shorts there, the lead in. I'm a big believer in good and evil, meaning if there was no people, no life, nothing on the planet, good and evil would still exist. It's not all just morally relativistic, and it's not like, oh, just because your culture taught you that, that's why you believe that. No. I'm sorry, bro. There's actually good and there's actually evil. And anybody who's come up against it, it could be something you found. I came across it in a temple in Peru. I was just down there recently, and even the guide was expecting us to run into it, and he stood back and watched us all walk into this wall around this altar where they used to do blood sacrifices. And let me tell you, not a good place. And I promise you, many of you, if you've lived outside of your house for any amount of time, if you go on any sort of travels, you'll come across places and things from time to time that really radiate. And it radiates almost like a heat, but heat isn't the right word because you can measure heat. But this is something that comes off of this environment or a genus loci, a place that it's hard to measure. We just don't have the tools to measure that yet. But it's a real thing. And, I think Jorjani, even though, I don't agree with everybody 100%, but I agree with Jorjani on most things. He's got a real hate on for the Christian church, and that's okay. But, the guy really puts the Thule in Cthulhu, so I'm all about this guy. His theories talk about how Atlantis is actually in Antarctica, and he has a pretty good argument for it. And if you check out his interviews, it really brings it into focus. But again, it's some wild stuff, so, brace yourself. As a reminder, though, it's not all fun and games. This stuff is deadly business, and there's another sad report. There's been too many sad reports that have come out about an MIT nuclear scientist fatally shot in his home. A homicide investigation is underway following the shooting death of MIT professor Nuno F.G. Loureiro, sorry, bro, at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. The 47-year-old was shot on Monday night, pronounced dead Tuesday morning. Authorities have not yet made any arrests. Loureiro was a director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, recognized for his significant work in physics. Not really someone you'd expect to get smoked, or would you? Because Well, there's a lot of guys who get hit in this field. He received his Presidential Early Career Award earlier in January for his contributions in magnetic field generation. What does this remind me of? A 22-year-old student at Boston University who lives near Larero's apartment, Brooklyn, told the Boston Globe that she heard, at Brookline, told the Boston Globe she heard 3 loud noises Monday evening and feared it was gunfire. Okay? I'd never heard anything so loud, so I assumed they were gunshots. I wonder why the cops didn't check it out till the next morning. Liv Schreiner was quoted as saying, "It's difficult to grasp. It just seems like it keeps happening." What keeps happening? Professors keep getting smoked for doing research in magnetics technology? I don't know about that. But actually, it turns out it kind of does. Larero said he had hoped his work would shape the future. It's not hyperbole to say MIT is where you go to find solutions to humanity's biggest problems, Larero said when he was named to lead the plasma science lab last year. Fusion energy will change the course of human history. It does keep happening, doesn't it? And more often than you might think. To reinforce this point, there's another Y-Files episode I'm going to link to down below, which kind of points out exactly what I'm talking about. It's about killer patents and secret science. For decades, we've heard about the catastrophic effects of fossil fuel pollution. For just as long, I've been hearing that global warming is a myth. But the two sides are constantly at each other's throats. But it's a fight that's completely unnecessary. The technology to create unlimited, clean, free energy has existed for over 100 years. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of inventors have created machines that pull energy out of thin air, or the zero-point field. Machines that could defy gravity, levitate, and fly. Machines that bend the fabric of space-time itself. These machines sound not just like science fiction, they sound like magic. So where are these magical devices? Well, when the inventors patented and publicized their technology, they disappeared. And this is pretty standard when it comes to this kind of tech. It's one of the reasons why I think we need to, well, the channel like this one, Sean Hunt's Monsters, we need monster hunters. We need people who are willing to go out there and do research in the field. We're talking about people who are willing to work in their garage. I am not able to work in advanced physics. I have a little bit of physics phobia, to be honest with you. I'd love to know more about it. I've been messing around with some consciousness stuff, and I think that and we'll be getting into more of this in the channel, which I think is probably a little closer to how we can make this happen, how we can make it more accessible for each of us everywhere. In parting, for this first episode, I'd like you to consider Grant Cameron's unified paranormal theory. Grant has been a UFO researcher for a very, very long time. And if you've been in the field at all, you know who Grant Cameron is. He wrote a great book called Contact Modalities, which if you haven't, you can find it on Amazon. It's a great book that gives you a whole bivouac of ideas and concepts about how you as an individual are able to reach out and make contact with something on the other side. Now, I myself am a very, very safe person. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to give a kid a Ouija board and say, have fun! You know, that's not my particular soiree. But I do think that we are in a place now where research can be done. We can hunt this stuff. We can figure it out, and we can compare notes. Now, Grant Cameron has got an interesting unified paranormal theory. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with this. It kind of crosses into some of Thomas Campbell's work, which we're going to get into later. He has, his big toe, his theory of everything. But his work also reflects the work of guys like Ivan Sanderson and John Keel and others who've been involved within the field, where even if you've been familiar with the stuff that goes on at Skinwalker Ranch, you'll see that some of this kind of makes sense. It's just a model now. It's just a model, and maybe the model's wrong. I mean, we got to start somewhere, and we've got to keep trying. And we definitely have to do better than these guys who are just, no, there's nothing to see here. It's all swamp gas. And if you disagree with us, well, you're stupid. Grant Cameron follows along in the footsteps of greats like Ivan Sanderson, John Keel, and others as he presents an idea of everything is the phenomena, which is what the CIA recalls it. And there's been books written by the same name. This includes things we see at the Skinwalker, Bigfoot, and UFOs. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with everything he says, but he has been researching for a very long time. And it's kind of strange. Everybody kind of goes through these things with the same sort of stages. It's like Bigfoot. everybody starts with there's no such thing as Bigfoot. Then you see the overwhelming amount of reports that go back as far as we have records. And they're like, okay, it might be some prehistoric species or some kind of monkey. And then as you do more and more research into it and you start looking into the missing 411 phenomena and you look into all these other things, you start to realize that these massive 10-foot creatures, which are sighted not just in the Pacific Northwest, but on every continent in the world, they got to go somewhere. Like, where are they going? You know what I mean? Like, and that's one of the things that being here in beautiful British Columbia, we're going to be doing research on. So stay tuned to next week where I'll put out another program and let me know what you think of this particular newscast. You like it? You hate it? It's still not too early. We've only got about 200 plus subscribers right now, but they're like hardcore. Like, these guys are hardcore. So if you want to let your thoughts be known, or feel free to you know, give out your theories. We're all in this together, and, you know, anything that you can suggest, you're just as qualified as I am. So until next time, everybody, we'll see you.